My name is Samalit Hogan with the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network, the Western Regional Office. I'm happy to be here today hosting this webinar. I want to share with you that we are putting together this webinar with other collaborators from the Western Mass area, including SCORE, the Center for Women in Enterprise, Mass Growth Capital Corporation, Valley Community Development, Common Capital, and Franklin County CDC. I want to also thank our funders from the Small Business Administration, the state of Massachusetts, and UMass Amherst. So thank you all for helping us putting together this programming to bring it to you, this educational programming. I also want to thank our speakers today, Eric Goldschein, he's a partnership editor at Fundera, and Amanda Garcia, she's a certified public accountant, and she's also the director for the Entrepreneurial Leadership, the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership at Elms College. Thank you both for joining us today. At this time, I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to ask you to please unmute yourselves and show us your camera so we can see you and greet you properly. Hello, Eric.
Hello.
Yeah. I'm missing Amanda. There she is.
Turning it on. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you for joining us today. This is great. Great to have you here this afternoon. So sharing the results of today's poll, it looks like most people want to hear more about other panelists, which are, about other business owners. So that's great. At this point in time, I'm going to ask Eric to go ahead and get started with his presentation. And again, I want to remind everyone, you have any questions, hit that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, or hit the participants button and raise your hand, and I will unmute you to ask your question.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully this is helpful to you. I'm going to go ahead and, am I able to share my screen at this point?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see. Am I doing it now? No.
Not yet.
Okay, how do I do that?
Pick the share screen button and then pick the right window.
Oh, here we go. Got it, guys. Okay, we should be looking at my screen at this point.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. As discussed, this is a conversation about how to deal with small business cash flow issues, specifically related to the coronavirus outbreak. I think this is a really interesting topic for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it's very pressing now, but small business owners can tell you this is an issue day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out, dealing with cash flow. So hopefully some of the things that we talk about today, you can apply to future situations, and hopefully there's something specifically here that we can apply to the coronavirus pandemic. A little bit about me and Fundera. You'll notice I look a little bit different in my picture than I do here. This is called letting your sister cut your hair during isolation. I don't recommend it, but what are you gonna do? Anyway, what is Fundera? I'm an editor and writer at Fundera. Fundera is a marketplace for small business financial solutions. We believe America's small businesses deserve to know and understand all their financial options. Right now, obviously, like so many other business owners and businesses, we are pivoting what we do, and we're now focusing a little bit more on what the coronavirus is doing to small business owners. One of the first posts that I wrote, I typically write about all kinds of entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, all kinds of small business ownership topics that are of interest to people. And recently I was sort of pressed into service to write a little bit more about coronavirus coverage, how it's affecting small business owners, new legislation, things of that nature. One of the first posts that I wrote a couple weeks ago is how to cut costs and deal with cash flow issues, which is why I'm here today. Let's get started on a few of these. Like I mentioned, I think some will be a little bit more relevant today than they were a couple weeks ago. Some will be less relevant because of all the changes going on to your businesses and to the environment in general. And like I said, some hopefully will be helpful to you in the future as well. The first thing we have here is cutting, quote, unnecessary costs. And I put unnecessary in quotes there for the simple reason that obviously in any situation, no small business owner wants to be spending unnecessarily. So this term can be kind of vague. Obviously, in a time of a pandemic, when costs need to be cut to an extreme degree, Someone in my company, I think, put this really nicely. I'm going to quote him. He said, "The general rule is if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not cutting deep enough." Clearly, we're going to all have to make cuts to our businesses, to our payroll, to what we do that feels uncomfortable in this moment. And hopefully this is not something that repeats itself in the future. But for this specific situation, obviously there's some immediate costs you can cut. I think obviously, canceling and getting refunds on booked travel, since none of us are going anywhere anytime soon. Making sure with your office spend that you're cutting off any kind of automated or recurring supply, whether that's food deliveries or cleaning, other avoidable costs like that. And obviously discretionary spending like entertainment needs to be long gone. Those things are a little bit obvious, I think. At this point, your hand has kind of been forced if you're a small business owner to address these kind of things. Other costs you really need to think about. What can you survive on, and what can you survive without? For us at Fundera, experimental and even less efficient marketing spend goes right out the window. We are not going to be spending in digital marketing, like in social media, like Instagram, or other paid marketing opportunities, paid per lead kind of things, because right now we're hoping that the organic demand from our business is going to be enough to sustain us. Obviously, that's not a perfect world. In a perfect world, you would spend what you could to acquire new customers. But in this situation, you need to cut back as much as possible on things like marketing spend. Also, software subscriptions, making sure that you turn off the auto renews on your software subscriptions so you can take the time to understand, do I really need this piece of software? And also, contract and non-critical consultant spend, bringing things in-house and cutting down on costs that way, I think is also really important. The second thing here is exploring your loan options. This is a pretty huge topic. I'm sure everyone here has been following the news in regards to loan programs from the government. And we could probably spend a whole webinar talking about this, so I'll try not to spend a ton of time on it, but I will say that in a cash crunch, you should explore your loan options. I think generally something that I try to tell small business owners is, in a perfect world, let's say in a non-coronavirus world, a small business loan is not something that you want to take out because you are struggling. It's not necessarily something that you use to plug a cash flow gap. It's something that you use to catapult your business to greater heights, expansion and hiring more people, renovating a space, opening a new location. In some situations, a loan can plug that gap for you. It's better than defaulting on other obligations, going under, going bankrupt. In this situation, there are a few major loan options that you can explore. The main ones are going to be through the Small Business Administration, the SBA. They have two main loan programs that I think people should be exploring. One is the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. That is a new program. It was rolled out a couple weeks ago under the CARES Act, and it was unveiled officially, quote unquote, and we'll get into that in a minute as well, on Friday, April 3rd. These are low-cost loans. They are forgivable if you use them for payroll costs and other obligations like rent, mortgage, interest, utilities through the first 8 weeks of your loan. If you do not cut your staff, if you do not cut compensation, that loan is forgivable 100%, so it becomes a grant in essence. And it is 1%, I think, for the remainder of your loan over the course of 2 years. The first 6 months are deferred, things of that nature. There are other terms and conditions on that. For this loan, you have to apply directly through a lender. That could be an SBA certified lender like a bank or a credit union. There are other non-bank lenders like online lenders that you can go through as well. This has been a point of issue for a lot of small business owners. Banks are only extending PPP loans to certain customers or only to existing customers, not to everybody. And there's been a bit of a scramble from what I've seen to find a lender who will accept your PPP loan application. I would say, I have a topic of interest here. I'm going to close that out. You can apply through your community bank, your local bank, the bank that you normally bank with. That would be my recommendation if you already have that existing relationship. I will say you could come to Fundera if you're having trouble with that. We work with a few different SBA lenders and can try to route your application to the right place if you are having trouble doing that. The other major loan program, I saw a few of you in the poll before this got started said that you have applied for an EIDL, an economic injury disaster loan. I think that's great. That is a smaller loan program at this point. It has a much smaller amount of funding through the CARES Act, but you are also able to, when you apply, request at the moment of application a $10,000 upfront cash advance on that loan. And best part is you don't have to pay that 10K back. It doesn't matter if you are accepted for the loan. Oh, hello.
Oh, hello. I just want to jump in real quick here.
Sure.
Eric, and share that just real quick, it's up to $10,000, and it is up to the SBA to decide how much they're going to advance to you.
Yes, that is a great point of clarification. You can request that, but you're right. It is up to 10K, and it is based on your needs, obviously, as a small business owner. This is probably the fastest way that you can get a certain amount of financing, like directly to your business, because it needs to be payable within 3 days of your application going through. And with that one, you just apply directly through the SBA website, sba.gov. No going through a lender, no going through other intermediaries. For both of these loan programs, I would expect there to be quite a bit of time that you would need to wait for your loan to come through. It may be days, it might be weeks. So this is not an immediate fix, unfortunately, by any means. You can also look into other SBA loan programs, which also take a little bit of time, but are not based on any sort of coronavirus issue, like the SBA 7A loans. The CARES Act also extends an employee retention credit, which is a payroll tax credit. That's a tax credit for what you spend on wages, and the payment of your taxes can also be deferred for a couple of years. I think it's 50% can be deferred until 2021, and then another 50% until 2022. A couple other quick things I'll say. For credit cards, I would probably not advise a small business owner to just go ahead and put a bunch of money on a credit card, obviously, because that's accruing more debt. I will say that 0% APR introductory credit cards, where when you sign up for a credit card, you get a certain number of billing cycles where you don't accrue interest on either purchases or in some cases on balance transfers, is really nice. There is a US bank business card out there that for 20 billing cycles, you do not accrue interest on anything on your card. So if you have existing debt, you can balance transfer it over to that card or another 0% APR card just for that introductory period and not accrue any interest, which I think is a really nice little financial buffer. Finally, I'll say online lenders are out there. They are offering fewer and fewer options every day. Their credit boxes are tightening. It's not going to be anyone's first choice. So I would not go with those first. Maybe further down the line, once things settle down a little bit, you can look into like a Cabbage or an On Deck or a Blue Vine line of credit, term loan, that kind of thing. Not today. That is not what I would say today. So that was a lot. Let's move on to the next section here. It is asking your lender for assistance. If you have an outstanding loan or debt of some kind to a credit card company, to a lender, one thing you can do here is ask your lender for a little bit of understanding and help here. No lender from what I've understood in my time working in this space wants you to default on your loan or miss payments. No reputable quality lender. They're going to want to work with you to make sure that you get through this and that you can continue to be a customer of theirs. So I would say you need to be proactive in talking to them. Don't wait to miss a payment and then say, hey, there is a coronavirus going around. I would go to your lender, to your anyone who you owe money to, basically right away and say, listen, here's the situation. What can we do? We've seen some lenders defer payments. We've seen them reduce payments on existing loans. I would say a couple things to keep in mind is, unlike other SBA loans, for example, specific to this program and this situation, if you have an outstanding loan, you're still going to need to repay your loan in full. I don't see any loan forgiveness programs on the horizon from private lenders or from banks, things like that. And it also may impact your business credit or your personal credit if you have a personal guarantee on that loan. So it is not a consequence-free thing to have this conversation, but it might be one of your only options if you have outstanding debt. So another tip is to extend payables from suppliers. Suppliers and vendors, this is another party that you are working with, that they are going to want to keep working with you in the future. They don't want to lose you as a client, as a customer. They depend on you very much as well. And if they are able to extend the amount of time that you have to pay them, give you a deferment of some kind or lower payments, I think they're going to want to work with you as well. We've seen that in talking with customers that that's a thing. Again, having a proactive conversation with them that won't damage your relationship. Like you don't want to force this extension on a supplier. You don't want to say, hey, you're not getting money. You're not getting what I owe you this month. Hello.
Hi. So we have a question from Tracy Viola. She says she's a realtor, broker, owner. Can she apply for both loans if she's the only employee? And
Yes.
what about unemployment, since now realtors can now apply? So I'm gonna take a stab at this question.
Sure.
So Tracy, you can apply for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Absolutely, yes. For the Paycheck Protection Program, you're gonna wanna contact your bank. And I do have a list of lenders in Massachusetts that are participating in the program. We just got that list this morning. I also have a Paycheck Protection Program frequently asked questions that the SBA just sent us this morning. So I'll be happy to share with all of you that list. I will put my email on the chat so you can email me directly and I'll reply with those documents so you got them. It's fresh this morning, like it was like 10 o'clock this morning, I got these documents. So I'll be happy to share with you. In regards to unemployment, the guidance that we've received is the Department of Unemployment is not yet received guidance from the federal government to process unemployment assistance to self-employed individuals. They're posting updates on their website, and we can check those daily because it will change eventually where self-employed individuals can apply. There's another question here. Do you file the PPP online through the SBA and then forward it to the bank you choose? No, Daniel, you apply directly through the bank for a Paycheck Protection Program loan. So you have to go first to the bank. They will give you their application. I know there was an application available to the Department of Treasury earlier on. I cannot guarantee that the bank will accept that application. They might have created their own. So you're better off contacting their lending institution directly and speaking with them about your interest in applying for that program.
Perfectly said on every account. Yeah, it is a difficult situation, just to go back to that very briefly with the PPP and having to apply directly through a lender. There is that like catch-all sort of sample application that we saw on the Treasury website. Some banks use that, some banks have other forms. And so it is going to be on a bank-by-bank basis. Then the bank goes to the SBA to finish your application process. They get approval from the SBA, and after that, they disperse your loans. Real quick, going back to this about working with suppliers. Again, don't force this situation on them. Try to work with them as they work with you. And you will also, need to take the time to research other suppliers in case the supplier that you work with now has this issue with other small businesses and their quality of product takes a hit if they go under. So this is a time to be proactive in speaking with your supplier and understanding their situation as well as yours. This tip is pull your cash out of fixed assets and costs. Fixed assets are a huge source of possible liquidity. Obviously, for the most part, when you invest in your fixed assets, your equipment, your vehicles, your heavy machinery, if you're a restaurant, your restaurant equipment like your ovens or things of that nature. And for the most part, these are sources of your capital that they're just going to stay in your assets. In this situation, you want to see what you would be able to turn back into liquid cash, selling those assets and then leasing them back as needed, leasing back certain pieces of equipment as you can, and then maybe paring down, as you need to over the course of this until more financial assistance from the government hopefully arrives and makes this not as big of an issue. Also using tools like contract manufacturing or third-party warehousing, so you don't have to take on the burden of warehousing, for example, your own inventory and things of that nature. There are options out there. I would look into these as well. There it is. Business insurance. Hello again. You're muted. Sorry. Somebody, you're muted.
Sorry, we had a few questions here.
Yeah, sure.
I forgot to unmute myself. I will send you all, just shoot me a quick email, information about the SBA Express Bridge Loan Program. That's also available through your bank. And someone else asked a question about whether or not you had to repay the Paycheck Protection Program loans. And yes, you do have to, it is a loan, but a portion of it can be forgiven when used for certain expenses, such as payroll, rent, premiums, some insurance, paid sick leave, things like that. I also have those answers in that frequently asked questions document that I want to send you all. And by the way, we will be talking to Oreste Varela from the SBA tomorrow at 1 p.m. We have another webinar, and we'll be able to answer even more questions, specific questions to those programs. But today we kind of wanted to go through all the tips on how to, manage your cash flow. And absolutely keep the questions coming. I'll be happy to jump in and answer them as we go along.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So real quick on business insurance, you probably, if you have, a comprehensive business insurance plan, you might have already looked into this. Does your business interruption insurance plan cover you in the event of a pandemic like this? Typically, the answer is no. Business interruption insurance typically requires that there's actual physical damage to your property, such as, if there is a flood or a fire, something like that. Even open perils policies, which is where basically you're covered for everything except for like specific exclusions that are listed on the policy, like a mudslide, for example, is something that I've seen listed as an exclusion. It doesn't matter because the insurance company is going to say, well, you need to show physical damage. And unfortunately, in this situation, a pandemic, a virus doesn't cause the kind of physical property damage that would trigger a claim. I will say that this is an area that I'm keeping an eye on because there is some possible legislation in the works as more funding and more relief comes to small business owners through the federal government. I know lawmakers have been talking specifically about this and talking to lobbyists and people from the insurance industry to see what can be done about this. And I've also seen some legal cases. I know that Thomas Keller, a pretty famous restaurateur, has filed a lawsuit saying that he should be covered by his business insurance plan. And so we'll see how that progresses and how that might affect this field in general going forward. So keep an eye on this, absolutely. Real quick, I would also say, considering alternate revenue streams, using your inventory and your assets and the systems that you have in place to make money in new ways. This could be finding new markets to sell to rather than selling domestically, selling internationally, moving from just selling brick and mortar to setting up an online shop like through Shopify or Etsy or Belusion or a lot of other e-commerce platforms. Shifting your assets and your inventory in unique ways. This is a tough one, obviously, because I think it requires staying open in some capacity in a brick and mortar sense, and not every business is going to be able to do that. I have seen, for example, on my street, a restaurant started selling not just the food as takeout, but they started selling produce. They started selling their kitchen supplies. They became sort of a market for people in the neighborhood, and they're doing very good business as a result, all things considered. Renting your assets to other businesses in need, whether it's equipment or trucks, vehicles, things like that. And this is something that you might want to think about. I mean, is this a pivot that your business could make in the long term? Maybe not always. It won't always apply in every situation, but there are some short-term pivots you can make until the situation calms down and things go back to normal that you can use to tide yourself over. Last thing I think I'll say here, I think this is my last one, is exploring grants. Obviously, no interest loans. Who doesn't want a grant? A grant is free money for your business. A ton of private and public grants are becoming available, and I believe more will become available as time goes on. A few companies, private companies that I've seen offer like types of grants are Facebook and Amazon and James Beard. Facebook, some of it is grants, some of it is ad credits. It is not exactly, all going to be free money from Facebook, but it is obviously better than nothing. Support from Yelp and GoFundMe. I've also seen the same thing, free advertising, matching on certain GoFundMes, things of that nature. And also you should see what your city is offering, what grant programs your city or state have set up for you. I do think that as time goes on, we're going to see more and more of these crop up. I would keep in mind, because these are not the only grants available, not just coronavirus specific grants, but other small business grants, whether they are women focused, minority business owner focused, the grants are going to be, as always, really, really competitive. And it's going to take time to apply. It's going to take time to make your case. It's going to take time for that money to be dispersed if you do win. So keep that in mind. This is not a quick fix by any means. And obviously, like we've talked about, some of the loans that we've discussed here, the PPP loan over the first 8 weeks, if you use it the correct way, the advance that you get from the EIDL. These are forgivable loans. So make sure that when you do, if and when you do take out or apply for one of these loans, you understand what is forgivable and what can be essentially converted into a grant for your business. So that is, I believe, the entirety of my deck. So I would love to know what questions there are.
Yes, thank you so much, Eric, for going through those.
Mm-hmm.
If you can please unshare your screen,
Sure.
we're going to have a conversation here. Amanda, if you can unmute and show us your camera, thank you so much. Great. Amanda, could you share with us, you work with many small business owners in this area. Can you share with us some of the stories, what you're hearing from people, how they're dealing with their cash flow issues?
Sure. So to add to the final slide about grants and things available, I do know locally the city of Chicopee has grants for businesses in Chicopee. So I would reach out. I'm on committees with a lot of these local business development, and there's all kinds of different grants from the city. From Springfield has a grant out for restaurant owners. So I would look at that. Go to the city website. But the PPP, a lot of what I've been doing is panic, right? Talking the business owner down. I will say that I frequently reiterate having enough cash on hand. And I know now is obviously not the time where you can be like, oh yeah, I wish I had more cash. And it's very hard as a small business owner. But working about the PPP and timing of that is very important. So if your business is shut down, now might be the time to apply, but some banks are letting you take the disbursement at a different time. So if you have a mandatory shutdown until May 7th and you're not working, now wouldn't be the time to have the employees get the money. Well, you can't produce any revenue. You might want to wait for the disbursement. So I think working through with someone who can help you with this, an accountant or your banker or several different resources. And some of my businesses that I've been working with have gone to the online sales. So I have restaurants that have started retail sales for parts of the things that they can sell retail, have gone to delivery, takeout, hired a delivery person, gone online depending on what the business is. And some just don't have the opportunity to make that happen at the current moment.
Right. Tell us a little bit about some of the folks who have applied for these programs. Have you heard back from them? What's been the feedback?
I think that there's still a big waiting game. So I know that I do know one person that got the PPP from their bank that was ready. Some of the local bankers that I work with on a frequent basis, their banks just aren't ready. They're working with third-party companies that will take in the application, but then their bank will be the lender. So they're providing constant updates. I think if you have a good banking relationship, just maintain contact with them. And then each bank is forgiving, what they're including in that forgiveness loan for PPP is different. So while there is discretion up to the bank in a certain realm, the formula depends on whether they're going to include health insurance, or that bank is not going to take that and they're only giving the loan for wages. So there's a lot of ifs, I guess.
One question we get a lot as a business advisor that I continuously get is, can people include their own income in that payroll line item to apply for the PPP? Do you know the answer to that question?
So I believe at the current moment, again, with the unemployment and the PPP, they're not ready. The PPP that was released and supposedly ready for last Friday, which is kind of ready, not really ready, is for wage-based. The formula does not include self-employment income at the current moment in that application. I believe that this Friday they were supposed to be ready with that release. I don't know if you have more information about that, Eric, but I don't think they're ready yet for the self-employment portion of this.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what you're hitting on there, I think, is really true in that so much of this is supposedly live and ready, and yet there are very few banks that are actually accepting actively PPP applications. A lot of people are saying they are accepting information for when they are ready to do it. And so, I hate to say patience is the name of the game here, but it is. And, hopefully I'm assuming as the SBA adds more lenders and clarifies these points about self-employment and things of that nature, that this will become easier. But I mean, as of today, Tuesday, it is still a waiting game.
Great. Great.
I think that's why it's important to go back to your tips about negotiating and talking with your landlord or talking with your who has your mortgages or asking for a deferral while you wait on this until you have some solid information or until the loan can be processed. It's coming. But I think if you work with people, people are pretty reasonable from what I've found. And there's a lot of different programs out there I have a client who had an SBA 7 loan, and I believe that they have gotten payments for the next 6 months on that SBA 7 loan by the SBA.
Yeah. A loan
A forbearance, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, really helpful for the people who are already in that place. But I think patience is important.
Right. One thing that people should keep in mind too, as far as we know, the information that we've gotten in regards to the Paycheck Protection Program is that it's available for you to apply that loan to about 8 weeks of payroll between February 15th and June 30th. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep that in mind. If you're a seasonal business, you have to keep that in mind as well, because it depends when you're actually going to be having employees on payroll. Right. Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Any additional questions that people may want to ask? If you want to ask a question verbally, feel free to click on that participant button and then click on the button, raise your hand. I will unmute you, or write down your question in the Q&A. And we have one, someone said, I missed the first part as it is on Facebook. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure which part you missed a lot, but if you want to tell us which part, what is your question, we'll try to do our best to answer it. Another question we get asked a lot too. I think somebody already asked this, if you can apply for both programs, but I think you handle that question very well, Amanda, where it depends on your specific situation and how much money you need. Also, if you still have employees on payroll or not, and if you foresee having them on payroll before June 30th, when was, how long have you furloughed them for, et cetera, et cetera. So reaching out to a financial expert, such as an accountant, and also to your bank is important. So we have, there is a recording of this webinar will be available on our Facebook page. I will put the link on the chat as we're done. And let's see here. Are there any other questions here?
I would like to just address. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I would like to address something that you said about. I agree generally that you don't want to rush into applying if you don't have a good sense of what loan makes more sense for you than EIDL or the PPP. Technically, you are allowed to apply for both. There is no restriction that says you can't. You just cannot use them for the same purpose. So you can't use a paycheck protection loan on payroll, obviously, and then take out an EIDL for the same purpose. You need to use that EIDL to cover other costs. So as long as you're not double dipping, as they say, then that is technically allowed.
Correct. That's a great point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Also, one thing that comes to mind as well is that, the EIDL, you talked about that advance that does become a grant after the business owner receives it. Is up to $10,000. As I mentioned before, it could be 1,000, it could be 5,000, it could be the whole 10,000. The amount depends on your needs application that you submitted and what the SBA gets back to you with. But I wanted to bring that up because you won't get that loan advance as a grant unless you apply. And even when you apply, if you get offered the loan, you still have the choice to decline it if you at that point in time decide that it's not most advantageous for you to take that loan. That advance does not get taken away from you. So I wanted to make that clear for folks here. Yep. There's a few questions here from Emil. Is there any way a business owner can defer or avoid paying the rent of their business properties? Amanda, would you like to take that one away?
I think this is talking. this is about dealing with your landlord and reaching out to them directly. So I had a couple clients who are restaurants and they're obviously not open, and so their landlord has negotiated with them. That's on a per person basis, and I think what to remember is landlords have bills too. And so I try to remind people like the landlord may not be giving you a reprieve because they don't have a reprieve currently. So the landlord is, they may have a mortgage on the property, other things that you just don't know about, the ongoing costs. So I think I would reach out to the landlord directly.
My hope is that eventually, and again, I think this will be on a local basis, on a statewide basis, citywide basis, that there will be some government intervention here of some kind of rent relief or eviction freeze of some kind. I know that is happening in some ways on some levels for residential rents. But again, to your point, Amanda, like it is really at this point a person by person basis. If your landlord can give you a reprieve of some kind, great. If not, I mean, again, it is about being proactive and having that conversation and not waiting to default or to miss a rent payment.
Okay, great, thanks. We have a question here. I think this is for Eric, or Amanda could also jump in as well. We mentioned business insurance in the presentation. Could anyone recommend a insurance company for liability insurance?
Well, the one thing I would say is if you're looking for an insurance company to get an insurance policy now that would cover these things, I mean, that you can't apply it retroactively. I think that's great to look into for the future. There are a few insurance companies that Fundera works with, like SBA the Hartford, Insurion, things of that, companies like that. Cover Wallet is another one that we like to work with quite a bit. But again, you cannot apply some of these things retroactively, and business insurance is probably not going to apply to many of the costs you're going to accrue over the course of this pandemic. But of course, it is great to have business insurance, in the future going forward.
Okay, great. Someone here asked, and maybe it may have been a few minutes ago, is the economic injury disaster loan program forgiven? And the answer to that question is a partial part of the loan may be forgiven when you use it for specific expenses such as rent, payroll. There's, I think I also mentioned premiums on health insurance, and there's a couple other expenses that are eligible to be forgiven as part of the loan. So what that means is you get the whole loan amount, then you go back and say, oh, okay, I spent all of this chunk of money on all of these eligible expenses, and those expenses get taken out of the loan. Basically, that portion of the loan can be forgiven. So to get a complete list of those expenses, again, that's posted on the SBA website. I posted on the chat a few of the links directly to the SBA website, where you can get more information about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Paycheck Protection Program as well. So let's see, we have any more questions here on the chat?
I think I saw someone raise their hand. Yolanda?
Oh, someone raised their hand. Okay, hold on. Let's see. They must have lowered it because I don't see the hand up. But let's see. Okay, Amanda, is there any other tips or recommendations that you can give to some of the business owners that are listening today in regards to managing their cash flow?
So what I can say is that you have to make priorities and also make personal priorities. And I think a lot of the work that I do with small business owners is about their personal and their business money is so intermingled, right? And so taking a look at the budget and seeing what is unnecessary. Of course, people aren't doing as much right now, so then they're making the necessary payments. But if you have no cash flow coming in from your business, and you still have rent. So I think taking a hard look at that and then working with someone and seeing how long can your current cash flow sustain you, making the minimum payments that you have to make and the required payments, and then what other money do you have and which loan is best for you and timing of that. Because what I've worked with clients is the PPP, I know I mentioned timing, but they can't apply again to the PPP. So they can apply for both, and I think that's great. And I think that they should do the economic disaster recovery loan. But the PPP very specifically, the timing is very important, because if you don't bring all of your employees back and they're not all there when you start taking that, then it won't all be forgiven. And so I think it's really important to work out that calculation and not rush to that specific loan. Only in timing will matter in people thinking it's forgiven. And also it's got a 2-year, really 18-month amortization. So no payments for 6 months, but a short payback period on things that are not forgiven on that loan.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. And so I think one of the points that we want to make here is that business owners, small business owners in particular, always have a bit of a difficulty managing cash flow. And it's so important to kind of stay on top of it, especially during moments of crisis like we are now. But looking at your options, really digging deep into your financials and planning ahead. And I think one of the questions that we had here in the Q&A is, could you use the some of these loan proceeds to pivot your business and to change your business model so you can, moving forward, you can, make sure that your business is more foolproof, if you will, to this type of situations? So the answer is yes, you can use the loan proceeds for your business to invest it. That portion of the loan, however, may not be eligible to be for forgiveness purposes. However, as Amanda mentioned, especially with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, what we understand is that you have no payments for 12 months. It's 3.75% interest rate. So there's nowhere else you can find a loan like that anywhere else. So in terms of getting capital to grow your business, to change your business, that's one of the best, opportunities right now for small business owners who have been impacted by COVID-19. So there's another question here by Yolanda. Yolanda asks, how long does the Economic Injury Disaster Loan take to be approved? And Yolanda, what we've heard from the SBA right now, it takes about 21 days or so for them to process your application, and another 5 to 7 days for them to close on the loan. So it does take, several weeks for them to get through the loans, approve them, and get back to you. We were told that the advance would take a lot shorter time frame to get out to folks. And this morning in the call that was at the SBA, they did mention that sometime this week, people will start seeing the people who have applied will start seeing some of those loan advance monies get through to them. Anything else you'd like to add there, Eric or Amanda?
One of the things that I think it was in one of the first slides, but the employee retention credit and the delay of payment of employer payroll taxes would be a great thing to go and reach out if you're using a payroll company. So this is a refundable payroll tax credit for up to 50% of the $10,000 in wages per employee, including health benefits. And then there's the delay of the payment of the employer's share of Social Security tax with respect to their employees for the following 2.5 years. So there's a delay on that. So those employer payroll tax credits are also a good thing to reach out and figure out if you can apply that.
Yeah, I don't know if I said this originally when I first brought that up, but that is a great option. It's something that you cannot do in conjunction with the PPP. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to take a PPP loan out, you can't take that credit. You can defer your payments. I believe that's available to all business owners.
Yep.
But you have to decide, and I think talking with your financial advisor, whoever else you have in your corner there, about what makes more sense for you, either taking the credit or going for a loan is what's going to help drive your decision there.
Yeah. On that point, I do want to, reiterate that this webinar, as well as other webinars, are being supported by small business technical assistance provider here in Western Mass. We have the Franklin County CDC, Valley Community Development, the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center, SCORE. We're all out here and available to help you navigate through some of these questions. So someone here asked, I applied for the disaster loan, but how can I follow up? Any idea? And I will post on the chat the phone number, the customer service line for the SBA, where you can call and ask about the status of your application. There's also an email. I will post that in the chat momentarily. One thing that I want to mention to you, if you have or have not applied for the loan, that to make sure to please copy, they can screenshot, print out, whatever you need to do, that confirmation code that you get at the end of your application. You need that confirmation code in order to follow up with the SBA about your application. If you do not have that confirmation code, they're basically going to ask you to reapply and get a new code and then call them back. So I know it sounds pretty simple, straightforward. You would hope that they'll be able to look it up any other way, shape or form, but that code is what you need to check in on the status of your application. There's another question here about collecting from Mary. What about collecting Social Security? Will that be deducted from the loan, grant, or unemployment? That's a very interesting question. Amanda, you want to take a stab at it from what you know?
I I'm trying, there's multiple ways to collect from Social Security. So I guess my question would be that, is this like you're retired and collecting from Social Security? And is that the reference? Like, will your grant be reduced by your collection of Social Security, or is this disability Social Security? So
I wouldn't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like somebody unmuted me. Yes.
Yes, I did. Mary, please give us some more information about your question.
Okay, so my husband and I are both retired and we are collecting Social Security, but we each have our own small business. Mine was first, and I've been in business for 6 years. And this situation is deeply impacting my business because my business is 99% referrals. And referrals have to come from someplace, and that's being out among people and giving talks and meeting and greeting, none of which I've been able to do effectively. So I wanted to apply for one of these, or once I figure out which is the proper one, but we both collect Social Security and we're both fairly high earners and we worked for a long time. So just curious about, that question. It probably will come up with retired people that have opened up businesses after retirement, and we both also have pensions. So wondered how that was going to impact our ability to collect on some of these benefits.
I haven't heard that collecting Social Security in retirement, or that pension, or that your other income will specifically come into play with these programs that we've talked about. I don't know if either of you, the question hasn't come up to me, but I haven't, in the details that I've seen, it doesn't look like it would be impacted.
It is a unique question for sure, Mary. But I think from what I've seen about how to apply for a PPP loan, they're only asking basically for payroll costs and to show that your business was in operation by a certain point by February 15th. So I don't see how anything else would apply, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question here from Liz. Can the PPP be used for part-time subcontractors if it seems that retail shops may not be open before July, August, or September? So Amanda, you want to take that one? Go
ahead. Eric is.
No, I don't know if I do, because I think if you're talking about being a self-employed worker, I think the PPP loan you can apply if you're self-employed, if that's what you mean by being a part-time subcontractor, but maybe not at this date.
I'm thinking that this is in reference to 1099 people working for you, so subcontractors.
Yeah, well, you can include part-time workers when you're talking, like, as you're on your payroll costs. So, but
I think these are 1099. So I believe that the answer is. Can
you shed some light on your question? You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Can you get closer to the mic so we can hear you?
Sorry, I muted it. How about now?
Perfect.
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
So yes, I have 3 part-time workers. I own a small shop, so I'm effectively closed. And I'm working here alone doing online orders from people on the phone or email. I'm not sure the shop will be able to open by July, and the PPP is saying you have to have people back employed full-time by June 30th. They're not full-time anyway. They're basically 0.3 of one employee. I'm a very small business.
Right.
Are you paying them with a W-2, or they are 1099 contractors?
1099.
So from my general understanding, at the current calculation of PPP, it does not include subcontractors.
It does say 1099s.
From what I've worked with the bank, I think that there's more information to come out on this part of it. But the bank that I've used with a couple of clients, they have only taken W-2 wages. I don't know if you have any more information on that.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. I think you're right that it's not 1099s. That 1099s can apply for their own PPP loans. But I think, there's so many things, like the Treasury has even updated this law and regulation around this law, I think today. So there could be more changes to the law that go on. as time goes on, and that could change.
Yes, I just posted in the chat some information that, thank you, Liz, for asking your question. I just posted in the chat more information about the CARES Act and you know, their extension to unemployment benefits for self-employed individuals. We have right there at the bottom, at the end of that, what I posted, it said updates are being posted by the Massachusetts Department of Unemployment Assistance. So you will want to check there. If you're self-employed and you want to apply for unemployment benefits, you want to check there daily for any updates as to when they might open that online for you to apply. And so I think Liz, part of the question is, you know, your subcontractors can apply for their own PPP or their own unemployment benefits. You probably may not use how much you spend in subcontractors that are not W-2s in your payroll line. So I think that's kind of the answer to that question. So there's another question here from Anita. Is there any help available for a business that has not been able to open? They cannot show sales or payroll, but they had projections for their income and expenses.
So I'm assuming that, well, Anita, I don't know if you're about to jump on and explain more.
Anita, you want to go ahead and add to your question?
Yes, I'm working with a couple of people who were supposed to have, one was having an April 1st launch and one a May 1st launch. So they've spent the money, they've done leasehold improvements, and now they're not able to open. And the question is, are they able to apply for an EIDL loan with the projections of what they thought they would earn, or even the PPP? Like what happens to people that just have sort of fallen through the crack, timing wise?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, PPP, I don't think that would apply because I believe you had to have been in operation by February 15th and had payroll by then. EIDL, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how that works. I don't think that applies either, but I would love to look into that a little bit more for you and see what I can find out. PPP would not apply, but EIDL might.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. And Anita, I think from the guidance that we've received from the SBA, I believe that if they were in business, you know, up to at some point, so they haven't, so part of your question is like for people who haven't even started the business, correct?
Well, they've been in the space doing the improvements, and one had a soft opening and one has never gotten a chance to open. But I thought there must be something that's available to cover them for the delay.
Yeah, for the one who did the soft opening, the assumption is that they were somewhat already in business because they did a soft opening. They have business expenses. They will be submitting presumably they will be submitting a tax return for 2019. Yes. So for that one, they're probably eligible to apply. For the folks who haven't even gotten off the ground, probably not.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Let's see if there are any other questions here. I don't see any other questions from the audience at this point in time. Are there any other things we haven't covered, Eric and Amanda, that you think we should also include in this webinar for people to know? I would add that, you know, there are many different, go ahead.
No, sorry. I would just say I feel like kind of the overarching themes of this thing today is that of the webinar is patience is really important right now because of the holding pattern that so many banks and small businesses are in at the moment, and making these choices of uncomfortable cuts, cutting uncomfortable costs, and being in a tough place. I think that millions of small business owners feel that same pressure, and so that's not a unique thing. And you know, having conversations with people, having conversations with your landlord or with your credit card company or whoever else, I think that's really important until more clarity and more guidance is out on who's eligible for certain products, things of that nature. I think that's kind of the overarching theme for us today.
Great. And I think Frank has a question. Frank, go ahead and ask us your questions.
Yeah, I have a small renovation business, and I'm finding that clients are not, they're very uncomfortable for us to move into their house, to start renovating work in their house. Would that be covered under the, what is it, the loan through the SBA?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, that's essentially income lost due to disaster. And so I think, and since every state now is eligible for an EIDL, I believe that would make you eligible for an EIDL loan.
Good,
Anything
thank
you'd
you.
like to add on that, Amanda?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay, Frank, go ahead. Did you have a follow-up question?
No, that was my main question is, again, I have some clients that are, feel uncomfortable about starting any work. So now what happens is I have people that are in my employment, but they can't do their work because they can't start the job. So
yeah,
it seems to me that would be right up what the SBA is trying to do there.
That's right. I mean, if you can
That's
show
correct.
that you had work, for example, this time last year doing the same,
Yeah.
I mean, that's perfect right there. That's exactly what it is.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
Good luck.
Thanks for asking the question, Frank. I appreciate it. Let's see. Do we have any other questions from the audience? All right. I just wanted to let you know that I posted a few links on the chat here today. One of the links is to a business resource guide. It's a Google document that is being shared amongst many people. It's updated daily, has links to a variety of various resources for small businesses, as well as a list of webinars, upcoming webinars. There's a lot of webinars there from all different types of sources in regards to marketing and legal and HR, human resources, and the Family Leave Act, and all of those things. So I encourage you to view those links and review those resources. At this time, I don't see many questions being posted, so I will want to thank our speakers today. I think we're just about out of time. It's 3:56. Perfect timing, anyway, for the end of our webinar. I want to thank our panelists here today. I want to end by thanking also all of our partners from SCORE, the Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation, Franklin County CDC, Valley Community Development, Common Capital, the Center for Women Enterprise, the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center, which I work for, as well as our funders from the Small Business Administration, the state of Massachusetts, and UMass Eisenberg School of Management. And I want to thank you all for participating in today's webinar. Please let others know about these webinars and share the information you've received with them today. If you need further assistance, reach out to myself or any of the other partners that I mentioned. Once again, Eric and Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great day.
Thank you.